قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي ديني. صلوات पढ़ने के बाद we've gathered tonight for the weekly Thursday night program, which is for us a holy night of the week. Friday is a sacred day for us in our faith. And it also happens to be an event where we have the nikah and the marriage ceremony of Mazahir and Fatima. Did I get the names right? Okay. And so I wanted to just, I was also keeping in mind that we are going through the holiday season. And so I wanted to talk briefly about this issue of, respecting other faiths while at the same time maintaining our own religious identity. It's a balance which sometimes becomes challenging, but we have to always constantly, work on both levels. And what I would like to do is, let me begin with the preamble before I come to that verse of the Quran that I recited, that Islam talks about respecting other faiths, especially when you talk about Abrahamic faith, when you talk about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. From day one, 1400 years ago when Islam started, Islam had a special respect for the people of the scriptures. This is the term given for those who follow Judaism and Christianity. In a sense, Islam recognized that these two religions which came before Islam were based originally on the revelation of Almighty God. And then Islam came afterwards as a later or the latest message of Almighty God for the human society. And so that recognition to other faiths in the Abrahamic faiths has been part of our theology and belief system from day one. It has nothing to do with the interfaith dialogue and discussion which is current during our time. And this is where we have to realize that, Islam has been emphasizing on this issue, but at the same time Islam says, you as Muslims, you have to maintain your religious identity and not dilute your values and your identity. Especially, there are two parts of religion or of life. When we talk about religious rituals and practices on one hand, and then cultural ways of doing things as far as our lifestyle is concerned. And Islam has two different views on these two different levels. When it comes to the issue of religious, practices and rituals, Islam is very clear that every religion has a right to maintain their own rituals and practices. And Islam doesn't believe in just mixing and matching things and creating more confusion. We respect people to, abide by their own values and their own teachings and not, creating confusion for themselves. And this is the verse which I recited from Surah Kafirun. The story behind this short chapter in the Holy Quran is very interesting. During the early days of the Prophet of Islam in Mecca, majority of the people were idol worshippers. Where Islam emphasizes the point of monotheism, Islam is totally against the idea of worshipping idols. A point came where the leaders of the Mecca who came to the Prophet and they said, why don't we come to a middle ground? For a few months you come and worship the idols with us, and for the same number of months we will come and pray like you pray to your one God. Maybe in the modern, multicultural idea, this would be very revolutionary. But from the religious point of view, you will be mixing things, creating more confusion. And this is where these verses were revealed to the Prophet of Islam, where he says, he is commanded by Almighty God to say, I don't worship what you worship. Neither do you worship what I worship. And so, let us keep our rituals and practices separate. Lakum dinukum waliya deen. This is the message of Islam. Your religion shall be with you, and my religion shall be with me. We are not going to create more, a third religion, a mixture of all, so instead of more harmony, you are actually creating more friction there and division. And this is where, when it comes to the issue for Muslims, Islam is a global religion. And this is where the theme becomes more challenging, that Muslims are found in all different parts of the world, not only in the Middle East. Actually, the Arabs are a minority in the world of Islam. Islam is there in Asia, in Africa, in Eastern Europe, now even in, even if you look at North America. And this is where the question comes up when Muslims went to different parts of the world, or when conversion took place. What happened there? On two different levels, there were two different kinds of, reaction. When it came to the issue of belief system and religious rituals, Islam's rituals prevailed over other cultural ways of doing things. So, for example, Muslims in India, if they converted from idol worshipping, they were not allowed to continue idol worshipping, because now they become Muslim and they have to worship only one God. But when it came to the cultural issues, the lifestyle, what kind of clothes do you wear? What is your taste as far as food is concerned? And things like that. Anything to do with lifestyle and culture, this is where Islam has given, open hands to the Muslims, that you are allowed to adapt the culture, ways of the areas where you are, as long as they do not conflict with the Islamic laws. And there is a very interesting, story about it. Let me talk about this, not diluting the religious belief system is concerned. There is a chapter in the Quran known as Surah Al-A'raf. And there is a very beautiful story from Bani Israel, the children of Israel, and the story of Moses related to it. Salawat, please. The story of the children of Israel is after their deliverance from Pharaoh and his people in Egypt. Musa, with the power of the Almighty God, they went through the sea, they saw all the miracles. They went to the other side and they were continuing their journey. Verse number 138 and 39 then talks about this incident which took place. When the Bani Israel were traveling with Prophet Musa, the Quran says, when we met the children of Israel pass over the sea, they came upon a people who were cleaving to their idols. So they passed by a group of people who were idol worshippers. And when the Bani Israel looked at them, they turned to Moses and they said, "Oh Moses, make for us a God like their gods, so we can also do the worshiping in the same way." And this is where Moses, according to the Quran, responds to his people by saying, "You are surely an ignorant people." These people who are doing idol worshipping, they do not realize that the idols don't have any power. Whatever they're doing doesn't have any meaning. And shall I seek for you a God other than the absolute one God, while he has made you excel above all nations? O the children of Israel, do not you remember that we delivered you from the people of Pharaoh, who were imposing upon you evil punishment, killing your sons, sparing your women? This is a great trial from your Lord. And so the story is very interesting, that a community went through the process of witnessing the miracles of Almighty God on them, the favors that He bestowed upon them. But then they saw some other people, idol worshipping, and they liked it kind of, This is interesting. Why don't we do it? And this is where Moses comes and says, this is not what we will do. This is against our idea of worshiping one God. And this is where I say that, we indeed respect all religions and the practices that they do, but we do not mix the religious rituals of ourselves with others. They have absolute right to celebrate their own in their own way. We have also the same right, and we do not mix with our religion with other religions. And this is where we have to realize, when it comes to the Prophet of Islam, he used to respect Moses and Jesus both. There are verses of Quran which talks about these two great prophets in a very glorifying manner. So the respect was there for those prophets. But when it came to establishing Islam and the Islamic practices, the Prophet wanted to have a distinctive way of practicing this faith. For example, when in Medina, where the majority of Muslims people had become Muslims, the 5 prayers that we have was already there. But they didn't have any system of announcing the prayers. Many times people will come to the mosque where the prayer had ended. So some of them say, why don't we use the church bell, something similar to that. Others said, why don't we use the trumpet used by the synagogues? Someone came to the Prophet and said, the Zoroastrians use the fire, so we can use the smoke as a time. People can see the smoke and there is time for the prayers. And the Prophet said, no, I would like to have a distinctive way for ourselves. This is where Jibreel comes down with the beautiful system that we know as Adhan, the call for prayer which is done from the minarets to announce that it is now the time for the prayer. Salawat. But coming to the cultural side of issues, this is where Islam has more, flexibility. When it comes to the clothing or the cuisine and the food and many, many things that you do as far as your lifestyle, as long as they do not conflict with Islamic laws, there is no problem. Islam doesn't say that once you become a Muslim, you must start wearing Arab clothes and only eat Arab food or only speak Arabic language. No, Islam is a world religion. It is as much relevant to the Arabs in the Middle East as to, let's say, the Canadian Muslims now. They don't have to follow the Arab lifestyle. They can use their own, if I may use the term, Canadian lifestyle, as long as it is within the laws of our religion. And so, for example, majority of us here come from the South Asian background. We are essentially original Indians. And, if you don't like Indian menu for your wedding, although that's where you're going to get tonight, I already have the details there. So if suppose, the bride and the groom say, okay, we don't want our biryani, we want to have Chinese menu tonight. Religiously, there's no problem. As long as the meat has been slaughtered according to the Islamic requirements. So when it comes to the cultural ways of doing things, this is where we see that Islam has given us that leeway, because Islam is not an Arab religion, it's not a Middle Eastern religion, it is a world religion. By the way, the biryani we are talking about, if you go to London, it's amazing to see how the Indian cuisine has now taken, is the favorite cuisine for even the British people there. It's difficult now to look for fish and chips. It's easier to get some samosa there in London. So even the taste of people change. And so Islam is not a problem, whether you eat one thing or the other, as long as it is done, prepared in the halal way, there is no problem at all. Salawat. Last Friday night, we had a gathering with the youths This was a discussion program where the question was about the issue of, religion versus culture, or religion versus tradition. And I actually summarized in my introductory remarks that in belief system we don't compromise. Islam is a religion of monotheism. We have certain religious practices that we do. We don't compromise on these issues, and we wouldn't do the rituals of others. Sometimes we have this discussion. We say, well, there are many things we do which are only cultural and traditional. They are not part of our religion, so why should we do it? You realize that culture and religion becomes part of your lifestyle, not your belief system. And there Islam has given you this option of adapting new culture and lifestyle as long as I said, does not conflict with the Sharia laws. But we have to realize a religion cannot function without a cultural context. You need culture and tradition. We look at the wedding ceremonies that we have. The religious part is very simple. But what about, the clothing of the bride and the groom? Well, Islam doesn't say anything. If you're an Arab, you use your own style. If you're Indian, you use your own style. If you're Canadian, you just use your own style. As long as I said, it fulfills the requirements of the laws. Now, again, being from the South Asian background, if you see the tradition that we have in South Asia, the wedding dress of of everyone, especially for the bride, is very colorful there. Then you come to Canada, you will see that the preferred choice is white or cream. And in India, white means something else. Very different. A widow is the one who will wear white. That's not a religious issue, that's a cultural issue. So then you move to Canada, for example, or your children are born here, and they say, okay, we would like to have our own, cultural, kind of clothing, which is according to the Canadian culture, if I may use that term. Religiously, there's no problem in that, because Islam has given us that leeway and that flexibility that a religion can manifest in variety of cultures around the world, because Islam is a world religion. Salawat padne ke baad. One more, religious ritual as far as wedding is concerned. Let me end with this before I go very briefly to Urdu to end my speech in the Urdu language. One of the things required in the Islamic marriage is that the person who will be representing the bride needs to get the consent from her. And this is a very important part of the religious part of the wedding. Sometimes we hear this stereotyping in the media that, Muslims force their children to get married. They don't have a choice. Well, the religious part of it actually says, before the marriage is solemnized, the representative of the bride has to have this consent from the bride. Now, how is that done? This is where you will see cultural ways come in. If you go to Iran or Afghanistan, when the Maulana or whoever is going to be the representative of the bride will go on the lady's side, and the bride will be sitting with her friends, and so he will ask her, and she will be silent. And the friends will say, oh, she has gone to pick flowers. It's just a cultural way of saying, this Iranian guy is laughing there. He knows what happens there. Then he will repeat the same question second time, they will say something else. So it has to be repeated 3 times before the representative hears the response, yes. And the longer it takes, the groom is sitting there worrying. whether the answer would be yes or not, because till the last moment, the bride or the groom can change their minds. And that is a cultural part of it. It's not a religious issue. Nobody says don't do it. This is where we see religion and culture, comes together. There's no problem. In India also, there's the same tradition. They will not respond. I remember this was about 35 years ago. I had to officiate a marriage there, and I went to ask the bride. First time, I didn't hear anything. I repeated it. Second time, no answer. Third time, no answer. Fourth time, no answer. So then I changed the question. I said, if I don't hear your answer, I'll take it as a no. And even before I finished the question, I heard a very clear yes. So, this is where I would like to say that when we talk about religion and tradition or religion and culture, these things go hand in hand. There is no conflict, or as long as they are within the laws of the Islamic teaching. Salawat pढ़ने पर आओ. چونکہ آج کے پروگرام میں شادی کا سلسلہ بھی ہے تو بہت ہی مختصراً ہم یہاں پہ یہ جو رواج ہے ہمارے یہاں کے شادی میں دلہن سے اجازت لی جائے، یہ بہت ہی اسینشل پارٹ ہے ہمارے مذہبی نکاح اور شادی کا، اور یہ در حقیقت سیرت ہے رسول اسلام کی. یہ جو ہم لوگ ٹریڈیشن اور کلچر کی بات کرتے ہیں، we should always also remember that ہمارے لیے صرف رسول اور آل رسول کے ٹریڈیشنز اور کلچر بھی بہت اہم ہیں. We should try to follow those examples. بی بی فاطمہ صلوات اللہ علیہا رسول کی بیٹی ہیں، عرب ہیں، عربی بھی جانتی ہیں. شریعت نے اجازت دی ہے، لیکن آپ کو کوئی مثال اہل بیت کی لائف میں نہیں ملے گی، بلکہ جا کے رسول نے خود جو ہے عقد پڑھا تھا جناب فاطمہ کی طرف سے. بلکہ اس میں انٹرسٹنگ ہے، آپ سوچیں، جواب ہم یہاں نہیں دیں گے کہ خود رسول نے اپنا عقد پڑھا تھا یا نہیں پڑھا تھا. اٹس اے ہوم ورک ٹو اسٹڈی دیٹ. لیکن بی بی فاطمہ کا جو معاملہ تھا اس میں رسول اللہ کے پاس ڈبل اتھارٹی تھی، ایک ایز رسول اور دوسری ایز باپ، والد کی حیثیت سے دو ولایت تھی جناب فاطمہ پر. پھر بھی جب پروپوزلز آتے تھے تو رسول اللہ جاتے تھے جناب سیدہ سے پوچھتے تھے. کبھی کبھی جناب سیدہ کلیئرلی کہتی تھی نہیں، کبھی کبھی کچھ بولتی نہیں تھی، لیکن چہرے کے آثار سے، فیشل ایکسپریشن سے رسول اللہ جانتے تھے کہ راضی نہیں ہے فاطمہ اس پر، اور وہاں رسول منع کر دیتے تھے. لیکن جب علی کا رشتہ لے کے گئے ہیں، اس وقت جو ہے اب یہی ہے جو ہمارے یہاں ویسٹ میں تھوڑا اس بات کو ہم نہیں سمجھتے ہیں. شرم و حیا کیا ہے، موڈسٹی کا جو کانسیپٹ ہے نا، اس وقت جناب سیدہ نے کچھ کہا نہیں، لیکن باپ اپنی بیٹی کو جانتا ہے. ہر باپ کو اپنی بیٹی کو جاننا چاہیے. بیٹی بہت کچھ کہہ سکتی ہے کہے بغیر. رسول نے جناب سیدہ کے چہرے کو دیکھا، فیشل ایکسپریشن سے رسول اللہ سمجھ گئے کہ سیدہ جو ہیں اس پروپوزل پر راضی ہیں. لہٰذا فوراً نکلتے ہیں، کہتے ہیں اللہ اکبر سکوتہا رضاہا. اللہ اکبر فاطمہ کی خاموشی اور چہرے کے آثار جو ہیں اس کی رضا کی علامت ہے. صلوات پڑھنے ایک بار آپ. دیکھیے، یہ جو علی اور فاطمہ کی شادی کی بات ہے، اس کی اہمیت اس لحاظ سے بھی ہے کہ علی جو ہے رسول اللہ کے فرسٹ کزن ہیں. رشتہ اپنی جگہ پہ بہت ہی مضبوط ہے، لیکن کہنے والے کہہ سکتے ہیں، اکثر ہم کہتے ہیں کہ ہماری انسانی ریلیشن شپس میں جتنے رشتے ہمارے ہیں سب کمپلشن کے بیسس پر ہیں. وی ڈنٹ ہیو اے چوائس کہ باپ کون ہوگا، ماں کون ہوگی، بھائی بہن کون ہوگا، چچا چچی کون ہوں گے، خالہ ماموں کون ہوں گے، دادا دادی کون ہوں گے. صرف ایک رشتہ ہے کہ جس پہ اختیار اسلام نے دیا ہے، وہ بھی شادی کا رشتہ ہے. جہاں تک علی اور رسول کے رشتے کی بات ہے، لوگ ہمیشہ یہ کہہ سکتے تھے ہاں وہ قریب کیوں نہیں ہوں گے، اس لیے کہ وہ تو رشتہ دار ہیں، لیکن اس میں کوئی فضیلت کی بات کیا ہے. عبداللہ بھی رشتہ دار ہیں، دوسرے بھی رشتہ دار ہیں، عقیل بھی رشتہ دار ہیں، جعفر بھی رشتہ دار ہیں، کزن ہیں وہ بھی. لیکن تو اس میں چونکہ کزن کی ریلیشن شپ کی بات ہے، وہاں مجبوری کی بنیاد پر ہے. رسول نے چاہا تھا کہ ایک اور رشتہ علی کے ساتھ قائم کریں جو اختیار کی بنیاد پر ہو، تاکہ امت کو اندازہ ہو کہ میری محبت علی کے ساتھ، علی کی محبت میرے ساتھ صرف مجبور اور جبر کے قانون پہ نہیں ہے، بلکہ یہ ہمارے اختیار کی بنیاد پر ہے. لہٰذا ہم علی کو اپنا داماد بناتے ہیں. صلوات پڑھنے ایک بار. خداوند اس قلیل بات قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما. خداوند جن مرحومین کے لیے یہ ذکر قرآن اور اہل بیت ہوا ہے، ان کے درجات کو بلند فرما، ان کے گناہوں کو معاف فرما. اور یہ جو شادیاں ہو رہی ہے خداوندہ، ان کو اپنی برکات سے نواز، اور ہمیشہ ان کو محمد آل محمد کے دین و مذہب پر قائم رہنے کی توفیق عنایت فرما. ربنا آتنا فی الدنیا حسنۃ وفی الآخرۃ حسنۃ وقنا عذاب النار برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین.